Hi everyone! Welcome to the final video of our Learning Anatomy Through Yoga video series. This video will be an integration of components of all of the different videos, and we will move through a full yoga flow that will discuss the engagements, actions, and stretches of different muscles over the course of the flow. When you're ready, we can begin in a seated meditation, coming to a cross-legged pose. You can let the hands come to rest on the knees, palms facing down on the knees or palms facing up to the sky, whatever you feel is most comfortable. Closing the eyes when you're ready. Rooting down through the sit bones, starting to draw length through the spine, allowing the shoulders to roll back, taking the first couple moments of the practice just to become aware of the movement of your own breath. Noticing the inhale as it travels in through the nose, as it lifts through the belly, through the heart. Exhaling it out through the mouth. Maybe letting go of anything else you might be thinking about. Sealing the lips as you start to bring the breath in and out exclusively through the nose. If you'd like here, you're welcome to take a couple shoulder rolls, lifting shoulders up to the ears, around, back, and down, both in the forward and the backward direction. And then as we begin to start moving our body with our breath, you can let the inhale lift your arms up to the sky, interlacing the fingers, letting the palms turn up towards the sky, opening the eyes, gazing up if you'd like. And on the exhale, releasing that bind and walking the fingertips forward. We'll extend into a forward fold, and here we'll unwind the legs and make our way into a tabletop pose, bringing the shoulders over the wrists and the hips over the knees. As we warm up, we'll take a few rounds of cats and cow, dropping the belly on the next inhale, letting the tailbone point up to the sky. As the chest rolls back, you can as the chest drops down, you can let the shoulders roll back, taking the gaze to the sky, and exhale one backbone at a time, rolling your way into cat pose, pressing the ground away from you, and feeling the scapula pull away from the spine. Inhale, reaching back up into cow pose, the shoulders pull back, and exhale, rolling into cat pose, softening through the chin and the chest. With your next breath, you can make your way back to a flat back table, taking as many rounds of cats and cows as you'd like. And then when you're ready, you can tuck the toes under and let the hips lift up to the sky, letting the shoulders pull back, letting the heels drop down towards the earth. And as you make your way into your first downward facing dog, you'll probably notice the space start to open up along the calves and the hamstrings, especially along the gastrocs, the soleus, and the hamstring muscles. Root down through the thumb and the forefinger, really pressing down with all 5 fingers, and noticing the engagement of the triceps as you let the shoulders pull back, and as you let the gaze drop down between the knees. On the next inhale, you can take the gaze forward, and on the exhale, you can tiptoe your feet up to the top of the mat, using the next inhale to draw length, letting the shoulders pull back, and exhale, softening into a forward fold, putting a soft bend in the knees as you let the opposite elbow come into each hand. Swing gently side to side, just letting the earth carry your weight. Maybe noticing a deeper stretch in the glutes, especially as you soften the knees. And if you'd like to bring the stretch more into the hamstrings, you can straighten out the legs, noticing how the quadriceps engage with that movement. Noticing the hamstrings opening up on the exhale. You can let the hands reach down to the ground, and on the inhale, one backbone at a time. With the eyes closed, start to make your way up, noticing the engagement of the low belly. So you lift up one backbone at a time. The arms lift up through the end of the breath, taking the gaze up to the fingertips, and exhale, draw the hands into heart center, closing the eyes if that's comfortable. Here near Samasthiti, as you ground down through the soles of the feet and as you draw length through the spine, you can take a couple moments just to find the length of the breath, noticing how deep it is, how long it is, where it travels in your body, and starting to bring the breath exclusively in and out through the nose. When you're ready from here, on the next inhale, let the arms sweep up to the sky, taking the gaze up, and on the exhale, hinge at the hips, folding your way down to the earth. Taking the gaze out halfway on the next inhale, hands on the knees, the shoulders pull back. And on the exhale, plant the hands, step hopper, float your way to the back of the mat, finding yourself in a high plank where the shoulders are over the wrists and the hips are in line with the rest of the body. As we move from our high plank into our chaturanga in a traditional vinyasa sequence, one thing you'll want to do is really engage the serratus anterior. And how you do this is by pressing your hands deep into the mat, thinking about your shoulders pulling away from the ground. Notice how your scapula start to subtly pull away from the spine, and how the arms feel almost a little bit longer. In order to engage the subscapularis here, we're going to draw the humeral heads just very slightly back into the sockets. This will mean lowering down the torso just a bit. And then the final thing we'll do is broaden the collarbone. So we'll let the insides of the elbows turn out slightly facing forward. And then on the exhale, we roll the shoulder heads over the wrists. And on the exhale, the elbows hug into the ribs as we lower down. You can always drop the knees down here if you'd like, making sure that the body stays 2 inches off the ground. Inhale, rolling onto the tops of the toes, letting the shoulders pull back, taking the gaze up to the sky, maybe even letting the knees lift off of the earth. Again, letting the shoulders pull back, noticing the external rotation, the lateral rotation that you have at the shoulder here, finding the engagement of the teres minor and infraspinatus muscles, and finding a deep stretch along the subscapularis muscle. With the exhale, you can tuck the toes under and let the hips lift up to the sky. Returning to your downward facing dog, maybe walking it out a couple of times, bending the right knee, letting the left heel sink back, and bending the left knee, letting the right heel sink back. Once again, pressing deep into the earth to pull your upper body away from the mat, feeling the hips rise to the sky. With the inhale, take the gaze forward, and on the exhale, step the right foot through, bringing the left foot to a 45-degree angle. You'll scoot the right toes out towards the edge of the mat, and on the inhale, sweep both arms up to the sky. This is your Virabhadrasana A, Warrior 1. You can let the hips pull into one line, and this is a movement that engages our psoas muscle and our glutes. And so what we're doing is we're really subtly pulling the right hip back and the left hip forward. This draws the pelvis into one straight line so that the pelvis is parallel to the short end of your mat. And as we pull the right hip back on the right side, you'll notice that you're engaging the glute muscle because the gluteus maximus is responsible for extension of the thigh at the hip. And as you pull that right hip back, you're subtly bringing the leg that's flexed into an isometric extension. Conversely, with the extended leg at the back, the leg is already extended at the hip, and as you draw that left hip forward very subtly, you find engagement of the psoas muscle on the left side. When you feel comfortable with that adjustment, you can let the arms lift back up to the sky, letting the shoulders soften. Maybe closing the eyes, finding a deep lunge in Warrior 1. Eventually bringing the right knee exactly over the right ankle. And staying engaged through the hips for the entirety of the pose, really thinking about the engagement of the right hip as it pulls back, left hip as it pulls forward. Noticing the hip flexors and extensors working synergistically to maintain your stability in this pose. On the next inhale, lift the arms up towards the sky. With the exhale, sweep the arms under, drawing right arm underneath the left, crossing above the elbow if possible, winding the arms, trying to get the grip if that's comfortable, or just grabbing anywhere for the fingers to have a bind with the hands. Here on the next inhale, you can draw the elbows up away from the body, noticing how that stretch travels along the supraspinatus muscle. And on the exhale, drawing the elbows down towards the chest, finding the stretch as it travels along the deltoids. Use the inhale to lengthen. And with the exhale, hinge at the hips and fold your way down into humble warrior. Maybe closing the eyes. Working to keep that lunge in the right leg, right knee stays over the ankle. And on the exhale, unwind the legs, planting the hands around the right foot once more, stepping the right foot back, and lowering down, elbows hug the ribs on the way down. Finding your chaturanga. Inhale, rolling onto the tops of the toes. Let the shoulders pull back. Exhale, tuck the toes under. And hips rise to the sky. Walk it out near downward dog. Bending right knee, then the left. We'll take the same sequence of poses on the other side when you're ready, using the next inhale to gaze up to the fingertips. And on the exhale, drawing the left foot in between the two hands and letting the right toes point out to a 45-degree angle. You'll want to scoot your left foot out just a couple inches towards the edge of your mat. That gives you the room you need to square the hips out to the front of the mat. So once you have your feet stable, you can really focus on bringing the left hip back, engaging the gluteus maximus on the left side, and drawing the right hip forward, noticing the engagement of the psoas as you square your hips towards the front of the room. Working to keep the back foot completely planted through the entirety of the pose, really noticing that the knife edge of the right foot stays planted on the ground. And on the inhale, you can draw the arms back up to the sky, the shoulders pull back. Maybe closing the eyes as you find your warrior one. Eventually bringing the left knee over the left ankle. Staying here for about 3 to 5 breaths. With the next inhale, you can lift the arms up high. And on the exhale, swing the arms under, drawing the left arm underneath the right. Winding the arms. Holding the hands bound, however that's comfortable for you. And exploring the stretch along the deltoid and the supraspinatus muscle. You'll notice that as the arms draw deeper into flexion, lifting the elbows up away from the body, you have a nicer, deeper stretch along the deltoid muscle. And on the exhale, as you draw the elbows down, finding space along the supraspinatus muscle, which is normally responsible for abduction up till 15 degrees of the shoulder. And so as you deeply adduct the arms in this pose, you have a nice stretch along the supraspinatus. With the next inhale, you can lengthen with the exhale, hinge forward, coming in at about a 45-degree angle. Softening into humble warrior, trying to drop the head even if that's comfortable. Maintaining your lunge in the left leg, keeping the left knee more or less over the left ankle, noticing that as you tip forward that you open up a really nice stretch in the hips as well. On the exhale, you can bring both hands back around the left foot, bringing the left foot back to the center of the mat, turning onto the ball of the right foot. Step your way back, finding your high plank. Exhale, rolling the shoulder heads over the wrist, dropping the knees if it's more comfortable, and lowering your way down, making sure that you're always at a point where you're engaged through the chest wall muscles, that you're always able to push back up. On the inhale, rolling onto the tops of the toes, let the shoulders roll back. And exhale, downward facing dog, the hips rise to the sky. Walk it out, bending right knee, then the left. And from your downward facing dog, you can give yourself as many breaths as you'd like to feel the shoulders pull back, noticing the scapula as they pull closer to the spine here, finding the release of the chest. And with the next inhale, you can take the gaze up to the fingertips. Put a bend in the knees, and on the exhale, you can hop your way up to the top of the mat, drawing the triceps to press against the insides of the knees. And I'll turn myself to face the front. Noticing the shoulders as they pull back, and allowing the forearms to eventually come closer to parallel to the ground. The shoulders soften here. You'll notice a pretty deep release in the hips. What's happening here is that we have lateral rotation of our hips, and so we are engaging our piriformis and the other lateral rotator muscles, and we have a deep stretch along the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, which are, as we discussed before, muscles that are normally responsible for medial rotation. You can take the gaze down in front of you, close the eyes if it's comfortable, staying here for as long as you find comfortable. It's a really nice release for the low back, and especially if you spend a lot of time sitting or standing, just pointing your hips in one direction, this pose offers a nice counteraction to that kind of to that type of movement. With the next exhale, you can let the hands press back down onto the ground. And on the inhale, you can lift your way back to a forward fold, taking the gaze down to the knees. With your next inhale, you can lift up halfway. And on the exhale, you can plant the hands and step just the left foot back. On the inhale, let the arms lift up to the sky, finding crescent warrior. Noticing here how, compared to warrior one, we have the left toes planted in the ground, the heel is lifted up. You can scoot the feet apart as wide as you'd like to give yourself a comfortable lunge, bringing right knee over the right ankle. And here you're drawing, once again, very subtly, the right hip back and the left hip forward, eventually bringing the hips so that you feel the two hip bones in the same line when you place your hands on your ACES. You can keep the gaze out in front of you, keeping the shoulders soft, lifting the arms back up whenever you're ready. And in Crescent Warrior, in addition to the engagement of gluteus maximus and the psoas muscles in pulling your pelvis square to the front of the mat, you also have a very subtle engagement of the adductor muscles. Even though they're not in the same plane here, if you think about squeezing the thighs together, about engaging the adductor muscles, you give yourself a little bit of lift through the spine and the pelvis to give you a little bit more length in the pose. On the exhale, you can hinge at the hips and start to find your way into lightning bolt, noticing that you still want to stay engaged through the upper body and with the legs. We're not really collapsing the body onto the leg, and the chest stays facing forward. You're slowly going to begin lifting the weight off of the back leg, moving into a warrior three pose. And there's a lot of options here. Depending on your balance, you might be more comfortable just letting the toes drop down onto the ground. If you'd like, you can even let the leg come parallel to the ground, noticing how the gluteus medius and minimus, especially on the standing leg, engage to keep you stable in this pose. You're thinking about pointing the sole of the foot towards the back of the room, keeping the foot dorsiflexed as the toes point down to the ground. On the next inhale, you can draw the left leg up towards the chest, and on the exhale, draw the hands into heart center as the outside of the left ankle comes to plant just above the right knee. Here we have a one-legged chair pose as we sink the hips back. You'll notice that we have deep lateral rotation of the balancing of the leg that's lifted. So the left knee, especially as it points down towards the ground, is moving into deep lateral rotation, which means that we experience a pretty deep stretch along the gluteus medius and minimus on the left side. The shoulders stay soft, the chest stays lifted, and on the exhale, you can drop the left toes down onto the ground, finding your way into a forward fold, melting down through the upper body, letting the head release, maybe letting the gaze go down between the knees, taking hold of opposite elbow in each hand, swinging side to side if that's comfortable. And on the exhale, letting the hands reach down to the ground, Inhale. Lifting up halfway, let the shoulders pull back. And on the exhale, plant the hands and step the right foot back. Keeping the left knee planted just above the left ankle. Inhale. Both arms lift up to the sky. Once again, engaging the psoas muscle on the right side as the right hip draws forward, and engaging the gluteus maximus on the left side as the left hip subtly draws back. You can place your hands at the anterior superior iliac spine, drawing the hips into line with the front side of your mat. Find the lunge as deep as is comfortable for you. Maybe closing the eyes with the next inhale. Draw length, and with the exhale, hinge forward, bringing the body to a 45-degree angle. And then when you're ready, you can start to take off, allowing the weight to lift off of that back leg, just lifting the right leg as high as is comfortable for you. If you'd like, you can bring it all the way parallel to the ground. Eventually bringing the hands into heart center. Keeping the right toes pointed down towards the ground so that you keep the foot flexed. And keeping the right hip bone engaged so that the right pelvis is still facing down towards the ground, in line with the torso. You can keep the hands in whatever position is comfortable, maybe even extending the fingertips out to give you a little bit more balance for airplane pose. And on the inhale, you can draw the right knee into the chest, both arms lift up. And on the exhale, drawing the outside of the right ankle to plant over the left knee. Noticing that, especially as the right knee points down towards the ground, you open up a lot of space along the gluteus medius minimus on the right side, as well as the tensor fascia lata. Keeping the shoulders soft and the chest lifted. If you feel comfortable with the balance, you can even try closing your eyes. And exhale, release the pose. Coming back into a forward fold. From your forward fold, you can let the hands reach down to the ground. And on the inhale, one backbone at a time. Lift your way back up to standing, letting the arms rise up through the end of your breath. Exhale, drawing your hands into heart center. Here you can turn to face the long side of your mat, letting the hands drop down if that's comfortable, or bringing them to rest on your hips. And then you can spread the feet apart, about 3 to 4 feet apart. You can keep the feet parallel here as we start to move into a wide-legged forward fold into Padottanasana A, or you can even let the toes point in very slightly. On the next inhale, you can draw length through the chest, and with the exhale, start to hinge forward, taking the gaze down to the ground, and then dropping the head down to gaze back behind you. At this point, you can draw your hands to reach down towards the earth. If you'd like here, you're welcome to scoot the feet apart even a little bit wider. And on the inhale, you can maintain length in the spine. And exhale, letting the gaze drop down in between the legs. As you move deeper into this pose, you'll probably notice that there's a lot of space opening up along the gastrocs, the soleus, and the hamstring muscles. Especially in the hamstrings, as you tilt forward in this pose, you know that you're pulling your ischial tuberosities posteriorly. And since that's where the proximal attachment of the hamstrings is, you're drawing the proximal attachment of the hamstrings significantly farther in space from the distal attachment. This is what creates the intense stretching sensation here. With the next inhale, you can lift up halfway once more, drawing the hands back to the hips and letting the gaze come back forward, scooting the feet back a little bit closer together. And on the next inhale, sweeping the arms out behind you and interlacing the fingers, drawing the shoulders back as the gaze goes high, Once again, maybe scooting the feet apart, maybe pointing the toes in very slightly, using the inhale to lengthen, and exhale, hinging at the hips, and taking the gaze down between the legs as the arms lift up and over. Finding a deep stretch along the biceps as you take this deep extension of the arms. You can stay here for as many breaths as you'd like, and then when you're ready to come out of the pose, on the exhale, you can let the hands come back to meet the low back, unwinding from the bind. Inhaling your way back up, arms come parallel to the ground, and then cactus your arms, placing the fingertips pointing towards the sky. The upper arms stay parallel to the ground. With the next exhale, we'll drop into a wide-legged squat. Trying to keep the knees over the ankles, sinking down low, noticing the engagement of the quadriceps as we take this deep flexion in the hips, and noticing the engagement even of the gastrocs and soleus as we have some mild engagement, mild flexion of the legs. Try to keep the shoulders soft. Lots of length in the spine and the neck. You can close your eyes if that's comfortable. Maybe going just a little bit lower on each exhale. And then when you're ready, releasing the squat, coming back to a star, 5-point star. Toes pointed forward once again. Use the inhale to draw the arms up to the sky. And with the exhale, you can step the feet together, turning back to face the front side of your mat as you fold forward. On the next inhale, you can draw length through the spine, letting the shoulders pull back. And on the exhale, plant the hands, step, hop, or float your way to the back of the mat. You can go straight to a downward facing dog from here, or if you'd like, you can roll the shoulders over the heads. Keep the elbows pointing back as you lower down with control, rolling onto the tops of the toes, maybe even lifting the knees off of the mat as the shoulders roll back. And exhale, tuck the toes under, the hips rise to the sky. Bending right knee, then the left. And when you're ready on the next inhale, you can lift the right toes up to the sky. And on the exhale, draw the outside of the right knee to plant beside the right wrist. You can let the left leg reach back, rolling out onto the tops of the left toes. You're making sure that you're comfortable in this pose as we make our way into a pigeon pose. You can plant the fingertips beside the knee, rolling the shoulders back. Again, really subtly drawing the hips into one line, right hip slightly backward, left hip a little bit forward. If you'd like to deepen the stretch, you're welcome to draw the calf of the leg, the calf of the leg parallel to the short end of your mat. And then on the inhale, lifting the heart, keeping the right hip pulling back with the exhale, hinging forward, softening the upper body towards the ground. Maybe just extending the arms out in front of you as you let the forehead release onto the earth. Here you'll notice that we have, once again, significant lateral rotation of the hip, which gives us a really deep stretch along the gluteus medius and minimus. We also have some amount of abduction of the hip, which gives us a nice stretch along the adductor muscles. Pigeon pose is typically one of those that it takes a few breaths for your body to ease into it. So take your time making sure that you feel comfortable. If the stretch is a little bit too intense, you're welcome to roll up a blanket or bring a pillow to sit, to tuck in underneath your hip to give yourself a little bit support in the pose. And on the next inhale, you can plant the hands back into the earth. You can let the shoulders roll back as the gaze comes back up to the sky. If you'd like to add in a quadricep stretch here, you're welcome to tuck the left toes back towards your body. And you can reach the left arm back behind you, taking grip with the top of the hand. Noticing that you have deep extension of the left leg here. And you exaggerate that by drawing the foot closer to the body. This opens up a really nice stretch along the quadriceps muscle on the left side, since this muscle is normally responsible for flexion of the hip. Lengthen with the inhale. And exhale. Release the bind, bringing both hands back down to the ground, tucking the left toes under, guiding the right toes back up to the sky. Taking whatever feels right here, you can roll the right hip a couple times, or you can just bring the right foot back to meet the left, letting the shoulders pull back, releasing into your downward facing dog. We'll move on to the other side when you're ready, using the left, taking the inhale to lift the left leg up to the sky. And on the exhale, drawing the outside of the left knee to plant beside the left wrist. Letting the right knee plant down, rolling on to the tops of the right toes. You can plant the hands, letting the shoulders pull back, guiding the chest up to the sky. Taking very similar adjustments, drawing the ankle of the right foot up so that the lower leg is parallel to the short end of the mat. If that feels comfortable, letting the shoulders pull back, subtly bringing the left hip back as the right hip comes forward, and on the exhale, releasing into pigeon pose, Ekapada Raja Kapotasana. You can soften the forehead onto the earth whenever that's comfortable for you. Maybe even using the hands as a cushion for your forehead if that feels better. Working to give yourself the first 5 or 6 breaths just to get used to the sensation of the pose, to notice all the places that are opening up, especially along the gluteus medius and minimus. The deep lateral rotation in this pose gives us an opportunity to stretch those medial rotators. And when you're ready here on the next inhale, you can place the hands back onto the earth once more, letting the shoulders roll back as the gaze goes high. And on the exhale, if you'd like to take your quadricep stretch, you can draw the right toes closer to the body, reaching the right hand back behind you, taking the grip along the top of the right leg. The right foot. Gently pulling the right foot closer to the body, deepening the extension of the right leg to open up a deep stretch along the right psoas and the right hamstring muscles, which are responsible for flexion of the right hip. Exhale, releasing the grip, planting the hands back down on the ground, tuck the toes under, and let the left hip lift back to the sky. Taking what feels comfortable, maybe opening the hip up just a bit before setting the left toes down to meet the right, returning to your downward facing dog. On the next exhale, you can drop the knees down to the earth, allowing the hips to sink back onto the heels, swinging the hips over to the right side, letting the legs swing out in front of you. Here we'll draw the soles of the feet together, scooting our way towards the top end of the mat. On the inhale here, you can hold the feet bound with the hands, letting the shoulders pull back as the knees point down towards the ground. Noticing how as you take this deep abduction of the legs, you end up opening up a stretch along the adductor muscles. With the inhale, you can roll the shoulders back, and on the exhale, we'll begin to tip forward. Knowing that as we tip forward, the pelvis is anteriorly tilted, which pulls the proximal attachment points of the adductor muscles further away in space from their distal attachment along the linea aspera. And this deepens the stretch that we experience along that muscle group. With the next inhale, you can start to roll out of the pose, coming back up one backbone at a time. And when you're ready, you can plant the hands beside you, and you can start to roll your way onto the back, scooting closer to the top end of your mat, if you're not there already. Rolling first onto the elbows, and then releasing one backbone at a time into sleeping cobbler. You can let the hands rest beside the hips, palms facing up to the sky, drawing the feet as close to or as far from the hips as is comfortable for you. Let the shoulders roll back, feeling the openness of the chest as you release here, closing the eyes. When you're ready, you can draw the knees to point up towards the sky, allowing the heels to come in just a little bit closer to the hips. And on the next inhale, we'll lift the hips off of the mat, interlacing the fingers underneath the hips. Roll the shoulders back as the hips lift high. Starting to find some opening of the psoas muscles on both sides as the hips lift higher. You're gradually moving the hips into extension at both legs, into extension at both hips. This engages the gluteus maximus, and you'll probably feel the deep contraction taking place there. Keep the shoulders pulling back, finding the space that's opening up all along your abdominal muscles as well. And on the exhale, you can release the bind, gently lowering back down onto the ground, one backbone at a time. Coming back down onto the ground, drawing the knees into the chest when you're ready, wrapping the arms around, giving yourself a really tight hug, rocking gently side to side. Just noticing what the pressure of the earth is like against your lumbar spine. And on the exhale, you can extend the legs out to the ends of the mat, letting the right foot open up to the right side, left foot to the left side. The palms can come up to face the sky, shoulders rolling back. Closing the eyes here and releasing in Shavasana, our final relaxation pose. And when you're ready, you can let the arms lift up and over the head, letting the toes point out to the front, taking a really nice full body stretch. Deep inhale, pulling everything tight. And exhale, send it out through the mouth, releasing, allowing the knees to draw into the chest with the next breath in, and starting to roll forward and backward, eventually bringing yourself up to a seated position at the top of your mat. Drawing the hands into heart center here, closing the eyes and taking a moment just to appreciate this time that you've taken to move with your body, to experience the actions of your muscles, and this time that you've taken to pay attention to your breath. When you're ready with this next inhale, you can take a deep breath in through the nose, allowing it to nourish your whole body. And on the exhale, send it out through the mouth, letting go. The light in me honors and bows down to the light within you. Namaste.